a rare move to clear the Texas House balcony. State troopers push out protesters as a bill to ban gender-affirming care for kids stalls out. Plus, the White House plans to send troops to the border as the end of Title 42 nears.
And it's hard to believe because we've been pretty darn busy the last several weeks.
What a former Border Patrol agent expects after the policy is lifted. And later, does the High Court need higher ethical standards? Texas senators push back against criticism of the relationship between Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and a Dallas-based billionaire. Capitol Tonight starts right now. This was the chaotic scene at the Texas Capitol today. LGBTQ advocates booted from the House balcony after chanting against a bill that would ban transition-related care for kids. Thanks for joining us. I'm Karina Kling. The House Speaker abruptly ordered state police to clear the gallery as protesters shouted. Minutes later, a vote on the bill was delayed due to a technical error. Our Charlotte Scott was there and has more on what's next for the Republican priority bill.
After waiting hours, a crowd protesting a bill to ban gender-affirming care for minors erupted as the Texas House finally brought it up for debate. As their shouts grew louder and more disruptive, Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan took the rare step to clear them out.
The chair orders the sergeant at arms to clear the gallery.
In the Capitol hallways, it got rough. State troopers took down and handcuffed a few demonstrators. Then the protesters were escorted entirely out of the Capitol. But the day didn't start this way. It began with a peaceful sing-in and a rally. 200 Texans gathered to say no to the bill being heard.
It is literally life-saving, best practice health care.
Rachel Gonzalez has a trans daughter who is currently on a puberty blocker. She's worried about her daughter's health if the bill passes because she'd be forced to wean off the medication.
This is not something that we take lightly. This is not something that should be a flippant decision by anyone.
Gonzalez believes the legislature should not be involved in medical decisions. But not everyone in the Capitol agrees. Angela Smith is with Save Texas Kids. She believes in parental rights, but thinks lawmakers need to step in here.
We don't allow minors to buy cigarettes, for instance, because we know that it is going to alter their health, and they can certainly make those decisions at the age of adulthood.
Studies done by the University of Texas at Austin show puberty blockers can slow down a child's growth, but they can also decrease thoughts of suicide in adulthood. Both sides of the issue feel they're protecting children. And although the bill was delayed due to a technical error, it's expected to be back up for debate later this week. And when it is, some of these Texans will come right back here to fight it again.
I'm going to keep showing up to fight for what I know is right for my child every single step of the way, because that's what any good parent should be doing.
For Capitol Tonight, I'm Charlotte Scott.
We want to bring in our political analysts now, Republican Ted DeLisi and Democrat Manny Garcia. Good to see you both.
Good to see you.
Tense day at the Capitol today. Ted, I'll start with you. I mean, first off, how rare is it for the House Speaker to clear the gallery?
I mean, I remember the gallery being cleared, the Senate gallery being cleared during Wendy Davis's filibuster. And I think that the precedent is pretty clear. You can protest as vigorously as you want outside the Capitol. I mean, those of us that have walked up there and seen, you know, right there on the south steps or north steps, but typically, you know, rallying away. But to unfurl banners and to chant and to protest in the body while they deliberate really just doesn't depend on the issue. Yeah. It's not going to be allowed and shouldn't be allowed. This is the time for the legislature to debate without kind of threat or protest. I know that in the past there have been individual people that have been removed. Sure. So it's, you know, but, you know, obviously, you know, both sides feel very strongly about it. It was kind of pulled down on a technicality, a point of order as we call it. And we've heard from the chair of calendars he expects the bill to be back in the committee later this week.
Yeah, back on the floor later this week. Democrats did get a win delaying the bill for a few days due to that technical error, as Ted mentioned, but looks like the votes are there to get this passed. I mean, what do Democrats do moving forward who are pushing back so vigorously on this bill? Yeah,
it's incredibly disturbing that, you know, trans youth, 1 in 5 trans youth think about suicide. This is an incredibly personal issue for folks. And as we heard in your package before, you have parents of these kids who simply want to go about their lives, and they just want to talk to their doctors. They want to go about their life, and for some reason, a politician in Austin feels like they need to inject themselves in order to score some political points and try to get into this conversation. And it seems that when they don't like what those parents of those kids say back to them, and what protesters say back to them about it, that they just want to kick them out.
You know, it's a difficult issue because it's not just sometimes the parents and the children agree, right? Sometimes you have maybe divorced parents where one parent wants to transition the child and the other doesn't. You know, these are life-altering decisions. You know, when you change your hormones, you change your health for the remainder of your years on the planet. And I think that, you know, everyone is saying you're fully free to do that. But when we're actually counseling minors of how to change their life in ways that I don't think we even fully understand will impact their health decades from now, I think this is an appropriate and thoughtful step. It will anger some people, but when you're dealing with children, I think you have to ask yourself what is in their long-term best interest. If they want to transition,
you and I may not fully understand, and those politicians certainly won't fully understand.
Yeah.
But I think the doctors that are prescribing this and going
they
through the
don't
process,
fully understand.
I think they will have a far better understanding than we will.
This is brand new. The idea that physicians are going to necessarily make a life-altering decision for someone that they're going to, you know, change their gender, block puberty in sort of ad nauseum. I think these are decisions. You know, my daughter, you know, I think you look at what all types of young children kind of go through. You know, you just really kind of wanted to know at 18, do whatever you want to with your body. But these are going to be difficult decisions, life-altering decisions, and
obviously passions are running high on both sides. I do want to ask though, because, and Manny, I'll let you answer this first, but this issue hasn't gotten as much traction, or issues like this haven't gotten as much traction in the Texas House in recent years past. I mean, what do you think has changed?
It seems like the MAGA wing has really formalized, and we're seeing this attack all across the country. We're seeing it make headlines all across the country. And so these Texas politicians decided to pull up the playbook of what they're seeing in other places. You're right, this hasn't happened recently. When we've heard an attack on trans people before, the bathroom bill, it failed. It failed because everybody band together and we figured out it was bad policy and it didn't pass through. But this time they felt they could bully kids and they could pass it.
Ted, what about the business community? Because we have seen the business community get involved in some of the LGBTQ issues and fighting back against them in years past, and I don't know that we've seen that as much this time around. Do you think that this could hinder the business climate?
I think a lot of this stuff sort of, when you go to your local Rotary Club, if you're a lawmaker, and you say, I don't think that children who are 12 or 13 should have sex change operations, I don't think the business community sees that as an issue. Whereas you saw, you know, sort of a little bit of a different, I think, stance from kind of the course of what it's like if you have an arena. And I just think this is one of these things where, you know, you can do whatever you want to as an adult, but boy, if you're going to change, you know, if your parents are in disagreement, one parent wants you to transition, one doesn't. I mean, these are the types of things that happen when everyone's in agreement. You know, these things. But I'm telling you, this type of debate as to where this line gets drawn, how young you start telling people that their bodies aren't going to develop, this is not going away.
Obviously something that the issue is not going away, and something that will be debated probably later this week, and we will talk more about it with both of you. Manny, Ted, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. Let's get a check now of some of the other political stories making headlines across the state. The state Senate approved a measure to give the governor precedent-setting power to overturn elections in Harris County. The bill would give Governor Abbott's Secretary of State the authority to order an entirely new election if there are paper problems. It's part of a push by Republicans who have called for changes to Harris County elections after the midterms saw issues like paper ballot shortages and long wait periods. A proposal to create a specialized court for certain business transactions advanced out of the State House. In the system, judges appointed by the governor would handle cases surrounding disputes worth more than $10 million. The Senate version of the bill is in committee. A countersuit's been filed in the first case brought under Texas's abortion ban. Back in March, a man sued 3 of his ex-wife's friends for allegedly helping her get an abortion a month after Roe v. Wade was overturned. Now, 2 of the women are countersuing him and claiming he knew about the abortion before it happened and didn't intervene. They allege he collected the evidence to blackmail her. Parents of victims of the Uvalde mass school shooting were back at the state capitol today. With just weeks to go in the legislative session, they're pleading with lawmakers to raise the age to 21 to buy certain semi-automatic weapons.
I want each committee member to go on record so the mothers in their district know where they stand. They either stand for children or with the individuals who murder them in classrooms.
The Uvalde school shooter legally purchased an AR-15 style rifle just days after his 18th birthday and used it to murder 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary last May. While the Republican-led legislature isn't likely to pass the bill, lawmakers in the House did present 21 memorial resolutions honoring those killed. The hunt for the man accused of killing 5 people in a Cleveland, Texas home Friday night is now in its 4th day. More than 250 law enforcement officers from local and state agencies, the FBI and U.S. Marshals are pursuing the suspect. Tips have mostly proved fruitless. The suspect had been deported 4 times since 2009, according to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. A spokesperson for Governor Greg Abbott walked back an earlier statement claiming the victims were all in the U.S. illegally. Authorities noted while the gun used in the shooting was found, the suspect should be considered armed and dangerous. Meanwhile, State Senator Roland Gutierrez is calling out U.S. Senator Ted Cruz for blaming federal immigration policies for the deadly shooting. Gutierrez posted a video today saying Cruz and other Republicans are to blame for incidents like this because they support looser restrictions on guns.
Here's the deal, Ted. It's your gun policies that have made Texas more dangerous. This one's on you, Ted. But anytime you want to have a debate on guns or immigration policy for that matter, I'll be more than glad to oblige you.
This comes in response to comments Cruz made on his podcast yesterday about the shooting. He said the president's policies have hindered immigration officials from doing their jobs. According to sources close to Gutierrez, he's considering challenging Cruz in 2024. Still to come on Capitol tonight, 1,500 more troops to the southern border, how the White House is stepping up security efforts as the end of Title 42 nears. Plus,
It's a band-aid approach that needs to change.
former Border Patrol agent weighs in on what he thinks is needed to help solve immigration issues. Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. With just over a week to go before the end of Title 42, the White House announced it's deploying 1,500 troopers to the southern border to help deal with an expected surge of migrants. Reuben Jones is in Washington with more.
Well, these troops are temporary, but their deployment shows the Biden administration is preparing for a significant increase in migrants trying to cross into the U.S. when the pandemic border restriction known as Title 42 ends on May 11th. The rule allowed the U.S. to immediately send asylum seekers back to Mexico. These troops, which officials say will be on the ground for 90 days, will be doing a lot of logistical work focused on things like ground-based monitoring, data entry, and warehouse support. The Department of Homeland Security says they will not perform law enforcement activities or interact with migrants in any way. Troops at the border are nothing new. The Department of Homeland Security says 2,500 military personnel already are there. And President Donald Trump also sent troops to the border when he was in the White House.
These will be active duty forces, although we continue to explore other options so that we could return those active duty forces back to their home stations in stride with potentially reserve component or contracted entities.
Now, Republicans have repeatedly blamed the large numbers of migrants trying to cross into the U.S. on President Joe Biden's border policies, including his refusal to complete Trump's border wall. The White House says these troops wouldn't be necessary if Congress passed immigration reform. Now, to try to reduce the expected surge in migrants at the border, the Biden administration last week said it will open processing centers in Latin America for people applying for asylum. The first processing centers will open in Guatemala and Colombia. In Washington, Reuben Jones, Capitol Tonight.
Joining us now to discuss this further is Victor Manjarrez. He's a former Border Patrol officer and the director of the Center for Law and Human Behavior at the University of Texas at El Paso. Professor, welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Given your background serving more than 20 years with Border Patrol, what do you expect this surge to be like once Title 42 does end?
Well, places like El Paso, Nogales, and South Texas are going to be busier than norm. And it's hard to believe because they've been pretty darn busy the last several weeks. So the last 2 years, but the last several weeks, we've seen surges of about 6,000 to 7,000 people a day in these locations. And so that number will increase. Now, I don't expect, there's estimated about 30,000 people waiting for Title 42 to end in Juarez. I don't expect 30,000 people to cross, May 11th or May 12th that come up. But I think you'll see large steady groups over several days and several weeks.
How helpful and necessary do you think these 1,500 additional troops will be? And of course, they can't conduct law enforcement work, as we're being told, but just in helping the Border Patrol at the border.
Well, historically, National Guard troops, regular soldiers that have come out to the border since 1986, in fact, have been helpful, relieving agents from doing what you would simply call administrative tasks, transportation, some like processing, things of that nature. So 1,500 is good. What I have not seen, though, is the geographic locations where they're being sent, because that really does matter. A vast majority of these troops going to, let's say, Southern California is not as impactful as sending them to El Paso or South Texas.
Interesting. What about moving forward? I mean, with standard immigration rules in effect starting May 12th, of course, if there aren't any last-minute court rulings, what do you anticipate in terms of slowing down or leveling out and into the next year?
Well, this process that we've seen the last year is going to continue, because what we've seen is, and this goes back to the last 35 years, is that anytime you have a consequence for that act, right, of entering the country illegally, there's an impact to that. You see the flow slow down. The higher the consequence, or the more frequent the consequence, I should say, the greater the opportunity to stop that flow. But what we've seen, there hasn't been much of a consequence. The vast majority of these individuals claim credible fear, asylum. Unfortunately, less than 5% ever get approved for asylum. And asylum cases are backlogged for about between 4.5 to 5 years down the road. So someone that crosses today will get that hearing in 4.5 years. And that's big enough of a gap that provides a ton of hope to have this flow to continue.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, Congress, the state level, there continues to be the stalemate over what to do on immigration reform. What do you think should be done?
Well, we continue to treat the border as simply as a linear line. And we've done that, since the beginning of time. Most countries treat it like a line. But we need to start getting into the mindset that a border area, which is all of South Texas, right? All of Texas, New Mexico, we need to start treating that as an ecosystem. Because people in foreign locations are really trying to grab any kind of hope. And once they get a little bit of hope, they'll make that journey that come up. And so we need to start looking at this as an ecosystem. Once we can do that, we can actually start passing legislation that is not piecemeal.
Victor Manjarrez with the University of Texas at El Paso. We will have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your insight. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Still to come on Capitol tonight, how Texans are playing a role in the divided debate over ethics reform at the U.S. Supreme Court. A Dallas billionaire's lavish trips with Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas are renewing calls for a rigorous code of ethics for the nation's highest court. But a Senate hearing on Capitol Hill today exposed the bitter partisan divide over reform. And as our Washington reporter Rena Diamante explains, Texas's senators joined other Republicans in pushing back.
If you're a Texas Republican, there's a chance Dallas billionaire and mega donor Harlan Crow supports your campaign. The Texas real estate mogul's relationship with Justice Clarence Thomas came up during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing Tuesday, scrutinizing the ethics of the Supreme Court.
That justice failed to disclose these gifts and has faced no apparent consequences under the court's ethics principles.
The website ProPublica revealed that Thomas did not disclose the luxury trips he accepted from Crow over the years, or Crow's purchase of property from Thomas and his family. Democrats and their witnesses, including a former federal judge, called on Congress to enact a code of ethics for the justices. Texas's 2 senators and their Republican colleagues on the panel largely came to Justice Thomas's defense.
Here's the left's view. I point to one article just 3 weeks ago. The Democrats need to destroy Clarence Thomas's reputation.
Cruz and other Republicans cast the new push towards the ethics reform as an attempt by the media and Democrats to tarnish Thomas and the conservative leading court.
This is about applying a double standard to Clarence Thomas and only Clarence Thomas. If that's the standard, going and traveling and being paid for by others, then guess what? Just about every Supreme Court justice has done so.
Texas Senator John Cornyn played a video of Thomas's 1991 confirmation hearings, back when then Senator Joe Biden chaired the Judiciary Committee. Thomas faced accusations he committed sexual harassment as chairman of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission.
As a black American, as far as I'm concerned, it is a high-tech lynching.
When they've been nominated for the job, have been subjected to relentless campaigns of harassment and intimidation. It could lead unstable individuals to decide that they are going to conduct an assassination.
Despite whatever ideological differences they may have, all 9 justices came together in a statement to stand behind their ways of reviewing ethical concerns. Justice Thomas says now that their policy has been updated, he'll follow this guidance in the future. In Washington, Rena Diamante, Capitol Tonight.
Rena, thank you. And that is going to do it for this edition of Capitol Tonight. We're back tomorrow with the latest in Texas politics. Until then, thanks for watching. Have a great night.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. For more refreshing stories about your community, click the subscribe button over here. You can also download our Spectrum News app and tune in to Channel 55 on Dish and DirecTV to get live news coverage, weather updates every 10 minutes, and more. We'll see you then.